All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today for our Build a PC demo live. Here with me, we've got Phil and Manny, two of our resident tech experts around here at DePaul, and together they're going to be showing us how we can build a PC. This is something that's sort of taken off, especially I feel over like the past 10 years. It's like gaming PCs have become more and more in demand, and like specs become higher and higher. So is there any way you guys want to like kind of give an introduction to like building a PC, like some of the pros and cons of it?
Manny?
Yeah. So building a PC is, if especially if you've never done it before, it can be a little bit of a daunting task. As in, like, man, what parts do I pick? How am I going to do this? Like, what do I need to do? But the nice thing about building a PC is that you get a lot of control over what goes into your PC. You know exactly, you know, how much power it's going to put out when you're playing games. Say you do 3D rendering, AutoCAD, whatever you choose to do with it. With a PC you built on your own, you have full control over it. You don't have to answer to any manufacturer. You don't have to mail it in. Everything is done by you and set up by you, and you have the satisfaction of having that full control. And sometimes it can be a bit cheaper.
Very nice. Yeah, I've definitely heard that a lot myself about people saying like if as opposed to like buying your own like a tower to use with like a monitor, like if you just put all the parts together yourself, you end up saving a lot more money in the long run. So yeah, that's definitely
Exactly.
something I've heard about a lot myself.
It's something that'll save you money and also provide a learning experience for you. Even if you are not in a tech focused field, our entire world is run by computers nowadays. It's
Mm-hmm.
really, really advantageous to understand what goes into your computer and what is making it work.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The more you understand about what the individual parts of a PC do and how they can affect your use case, depending on what you want to do, the better off you're going to be. And it is a daunting task, as Manny said. Um, you're basically playing with a very expensive Lego set, as we've described. Um, but it is just that easy. You follow the directions, just like the Lego sets, and eventually you'll have it working.
All right. Yeah. Very nice. All right. Well, I know that in order to showcase how we could get things started here and put things together, I know we have the Steam PC Builder, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, a
Yes.
PC building
Awesome.
simulator.
So then, yeah, feel free to show us around, get us started. This looks really cool already. And everybody watching, if anybody has any questions, be sure to let us know in the respective messaging service for your streaming platform that you're watching from, and we will answer them. We'll answer them a little bit later on.
Cool.
Cool. So probably the first thing you want to do before you even start building your computer is determine what are you going to do with it, and then how much you're willing to spend to accomplish that goal. The most common use case nowadays is gaming. I mean, this is DePaul Esports stream, isn't it? So for a gaming PC, you can go from a budget build that costs you, the tower will cost in total $500 to $600, or you can go full top of the ceiling with the top end parts, like hard tube liquid cooling. The sky's the limit. But it's really important to understand what what your limitations are. You don't really need a $2,000 computer if you're going to be gaming in 1080p.
Right.
Like, if you're trying to game in 4K, then that's maybe a lot more reasonable. Even if you're trying to game in the middle, which is 1440p, you can achieve that at a solid frame rate without spending an insane amount of money. It really comes down to, like I previously mentioned, what do you want to do with it, and how much are you willing to spend? And for more specialized cases like 3D rendering, workstation tasks, AutoCAD, if you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, you already have an understanding of what you're going to buy, because the parts in order to do that are typically specialized, and they have a different cost than what a normal consumer part would cost.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll probably just. I mean, typically one of the first questions we would answer doing this in person is usually the question that's on everyone's mind, which is how much does it cost? I made a good breakdown of that. There are certainly some budget builds out there that can save you some money. and still give you a decent enough computer to play some games on. And then obviously, you know, if you have the money, you could spend basically all of it to make it expensive as you want. For the purpose today, we'll build a, you know, just kind of an average, quick PC that we could just put together pretty quick here in this application. In this game, I guess, is technically it's a game.
And for the specs that we'll be running, this is something that can easily run games at 1080p, which is about the standard monitor resolution nowadays. If you look on the Steam hardware charts, the majority of people are gaming on 1080p. There's like maybe 15% are on 1440p, and I think it's below 5% that are actually playing on 4K. And this is a sample set of millions of gamers.
So here we'll look at kind of the basic parts that go into a PC. Everything sort of starts with your case. This is the container that contains all of the parts. And this game shows you a good selection of cases to choose from. There are all sorts of different builds you can do. If you're going to do, you know, a big custom water loop cooling sort of PC, then you're going to want kind of what's called an ATX full tower. If you're just building something small and you don't need a whole bunch of parts in it, you can use usually like a mini ATX or micro ATX. The standard ATX build is what a lot of people build. That's kind of your standard, you know. You think of a computer tower. That's basically what you pictured. The first thing that came to your head, and that's what the majority of parts are available for. Although the smaller builds are becoming more popular, things that fit into, you know, cool little square cases like these. After that, you have your motherboard. That is essentially the brain of the PC. All of the other parts of your computer are going to plug into this motherboard. This is sort of the central nervous system, and brain, I guess, is part of the central nervous system. So yeah, you kind of, when I build a PC, I pick out all the parts I want and then just find a motherboard that kind of fits with it, and has the things I want.
You don't need to go super crazy with a motherboard, like in terms of price, unless you know exactly what features are you're looking for. And the more expensive ones tend to have more overclocking capabilities, which is like where you're setting your CPU to go faster than what it's factory set to do. More USB controllers, additional slots, additional RAM. Some of them have special slots. So for what we're doing today, like you can get like a standard ATX or ITX board, and those TX designations with the letter in front is just the size. But for something with gaming, you just have to consider, it goes into that same consideration as to like how crazy am I going with this. And with a motherboard, a typical average motherboard that's going to do everything a typical gamer wants it to do, that average is about at around 120 for about a mid-range one to 250 for a really high-end one. And for the high-end ones, you might not even end up using all those features. So something to think about.
Sure. The next part I'll talk about is memory. So this is commonly referred to as RAM, random access memory. This is, I like to use analogies when I'm explaining technical stuff. So the way I would explain memory is, say you're a carpenter. This would be the size of your workbench. This would be how much stuff you could work on at the same time. The more RAM you have, the bigger your workbench. The less RAM, the smaller your workbench. How many applications you can have open. Even different settings in games will cause you to use more RAM. Yeah, and we would recommend, you know, at least 8 gigs for a PC today. You could push that up to 16 to be more comfortable, and 32 to have some headroom for the future. Next part would probably be the CPU. This is, like I said, the motherboard's the central nervous system. This is the brain. This is what processes all of everything your computer's trying to do. And it's pretty important with a gaming PC to get at least a mid-range CPU. You go on too far on the low end, and you're going to struggle performance-wise. But there are certainly some affordable options. Core i5, I would say, is if you want to have a good workable PC, a Core i5 would be probably your starting point.
Core i5, and then the AMD equivalent would be a Ryzen 5. So they share familiarity in their naming schemes. So that way it's not as confusing to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Like if keeping track of those numbers is hard, like the average price of a good CPU like that is going to be around, if on sale it'll be about $150 to $160, and then average is about 200, and then really high end being above $300. And
And you, go ahead.
you don't really need, when you're looking at things like you'll see a lot of marketing stuff come at you, like, oh, like, look, this has like 8 cores, 16 thread, and all this like crazy stuff. For gaming, you don't really need anything more than 6 cores. 4 cores is kind of getting phased out now because of AMD, which we can go into discussion after. But you don't really need anything more than 6 cores, and those 6 cores will have 12 threads, and what those threads are pipelines to process information. So 6 is pretty much as high as you're going to need to go. If you do anything heavier than gaming, then you can consider something like an i7. Phil's hovering over an i5 right now, which is pretty standard, and will get you, and a processor will last you, especially if you treat it right, like easily up to 5 years. So it's you're going in for the long haul.
Mm. Yeah, this has been a pretty standard process that people purchase for gaming systems. Either this one, or if you wanted to step up, not the i9. I'm sure the i7 9600K is in here somewhere, but yeah, this one. i7 9700K, sorry. Okay. Another big part is storage. So if you think about the size of the workbench is the RAM, storage is essentially your toolboxes and your closets, and where you have all your tools and and the things you're working on. This is going to house your games, the operating system, any personal files that you might want to hold on your machine. I recommend a primary drive of a solid-state drive. Typically today people are using drives like this. They're called an M2 solid-state. They're really only about this big. They're very small, and they fit directly onto the motherboard now. Whereas before you used to have to put them in some sort of caddy that would fit in a specific spot in your PC. Now you can still get a traditional spinning disk hard drive if you plan on having a lot of storage, or if you want to play a lot of large games. But these M2 drives are going up to very large sizes nowadays, even up to 2 terabytes. So you could just purchase a 2 terabyte solid state drive and be covered for pretty much any game you want to install. Yeah, and including the operating system and all that. And all
The nice thing about those spinning disk drives is that they've gone down in cost significantly,
right.
and as time goes on, as technology gets better, the price of storage gets driven down. And these use about the same chips or similar chips as RAM does, so their prices fall together. A fairly budget option would be to buy a $500, or I'm sorry, a 500 gig, $500, wow, 500 gig M2 SSD, and then buy a spinning disk drive to shove all your documents, your movies, all that stuff on the spinning disk drive, because the M2 the solid state drives get the most performance out of being used for programs in your operating system, like Windows or Linux or whatever you want to install onto it. The SSD is best used for that. And then the spinning disk drive, even in server and enterprise applications, they still use those because of how cost efficient they are and how much you can store on them.
Yeah. Basically, it's a very simple trade-off: speed for capacity. So solid states are, if you take two things of the same price, a hard drive and a solid state drive, the solid state drive is going to be much faster but not have as much capacity. The spinning disk hard drive will have a lot more capacity but will be much slower. So, as Manny said, you typically save that for data storage, music, movies, documents, that sort of thing, and then put your games and your operating system on the solid-state drive. Next up, the biggest important part for a gaming PC is the graphics card. Now, this is the the component that will essentially be rendering and processing all the physics in the game in real time. So when it comes to wanting to play a game with high graphics and high frame rates, this is an extremely important part for you to get. Most motherboards and processors will come with integrated graphics, but not recommended for a gaming PC. If you're building a PC for simple everyday use, then the integrated graphics card should work fine. The majority of DePaul's faculty and staff machines don't have discrete graphics cards, as these are referred to, and those people are able to, work in Outlook and the internet just fine. This has really gone crazy over the last few years. In my early days, the top of the line GPU was always about $500-600. And then it tiered down from there with the generation. Lower end graphics cards cost less. The top of the line ones were always about $500, $500-600. And then Bitcoin mining came out and severely jacked up all the prices of all your video cards. They haven't really come down. They have come down a little bit, but I think they realize that people will still kind of pay those prices. So it's supply demand. It's not going to come down if people don't stop buying.
Exactly, and competition is always good, especially if you're following recently the goings on with NVIDIA and AMD, who are the main graphics cards manufacturers. Typically, when choosing a graphics card, you want to consider. There's a lot of websites and a lot of places that will give you recommendations, but you want to consider essentially the number one consideration is what monitor resolution are you playing at. If you're playing at 1080p, something like a 2070 or an NVIDIA like 70 series is going to be fine. On the AMD side, that would be a 5700 XT. They have different naming conventions, so it's good to do a little bit of reading before you decide to plop down a bunch of money. And another reason you should do a little bit of research, especially when it comes to the graphics card, is going to be for the next part that we show, which is power supplies, because some of these graphics cards pull a lot of power. The two most power hungry parts in your computer are going to be your processor and your graphics card. And it's likely, depending on the graphics card that you pick, it's going to sip a lot of power. The newest graphics card from NVIDIA uses about 350 to 450 watts at a time. And that's a lot. An average power supply wattage is going to be around 650 to 750, and that's pretty high already. So it's something to consider when you're piecing out everything.
That's a perfect segue to talk about power supplies. So power supplies are essentially what converts the power from your wall to power the parts in your computer. And we'll show later the website that we use to build PCs has sort of a calculator. So as you're putting your PC together, it'll have a good idea of how much wattage you need for a power supply. I usually like to go maybe 100 watts over that, just to be on the safe side of things. But yeah, typically for your average gaming PC, a 750 watt power supply will be more than enough. I think I've got a 650 in mine, and I've got a 2080 Ti. So, and I mean, they make some of these can go up to 1200 watts for people that do crazy SLI setups with multiple GPUs. But for the purpose of keeping this simple, your first PC is not going to be a custom water looped with quad SLI. So. Yeah, I think that's the majority of the parts we were talking about. Let me just make sure here.
There's smaller details such as like RGB controllers, fan controllers, different kind of face cans, or case fans, sorry. One more thing before we move ahead is CPU cooling. Mm-hmm. Not every processor comes with a heatsink to put on top of it. Processors get very hot, and even on the graphics card, those big fans you see on that, the radiator, that's all to remove heat. There's two different ways you can go with CPU cooling. You can go with air cooling, which is essentially a big hunk of metal, with a fan on it to move heat away from the metal,
Like this
which
here.
exactly. And then there's something called an AIO. It's called an all-in-one water cooling loop. So when you hear water cooling has changed a lot in the last like decade. Before, water cooling was all like, custom tubing. You had pumps, very complicated setups, and that's called an open loop. But these are called a closed loop. So you're never going to open the piping or open up the pump or anything on here. Like, it's meant to just install it and work. The nice thing about these is that they're very much quieter than an air cooling, and it'll give you more room in your case. And if you're trying to overclock your CPU, these are also very efficient. There are air coolers that do about the same, but one consideration, the biggest consideration is, A, will this fit in my case? And B, how much cooling do I really need?
Yeah.
One on the screen here, the Entech Mercury 120. On my PC before this one, I used something similar to that on my Intel CPU. I had an i5, and it would keep it at like a nice frosty, like 24 degrees Celsius, which is low. That's pretty cool. With a standard like heatsink, like the little janky ones that come with the Intel processors, I don't think they come with them anymore. The AMD ones do at the cheaper end. Those will idle your CPU at around 40 to 50, which is still okay. The hottest it can go before it breaks is about 100 degrees Celsius, but the cooler you can keep that part, the better longevity it'll have, and the more efficiently it'll run. It'll stay with you for longer. The better you treat it, the better you cool it. Because the more heat you put into it, the more energy it gives off. Eventually, that part is going to break down. So it's another consideration when you're putting everything together.
Yeah, and I've been using all-in-one CPU cooling for the last 2 builds I've done personally. I was a little iffy at first. It's always a little scary putting something with water in something that's not supposed to have water in it. They've always been very solid. I've never had leaks coming out of any of these units, and they've worked good for me. But as Manny said, if you're not planning on doing a lot of overclocking, this would be a good place to shave off some dollars and just kind of get a somewhat standard air cooler if one doesn't already come with a processor. A few PCs I built for people that I knew that they weren't going to be overclocking because they didn't know how or because they just weren't interested. I usually just put the stock CPU cooler on it, and it was more than enough to handle the cooling for their machine. So before we move on to the next part, we'll check the comments here.
Yeah, we did actually get a question a little bit ago from LOL Sebio, and he's asking, what's better, G-Sync or FreeSync, and what's like the primary difference between the two?
Can I take this one?
Sure.
So G-Sync is a proprietary technology made by NVIDIA. FreeSync is an open source software made by AMD. The difference between them is, with a true G-Sync monitor, there's actually a chip inside the monitor. There's proprietary hardware that syncs the frame rate of the game to the frame of your monitor. So that way it's as smooth it can possibly be with no tearing. And it syncs it up to match with the refresh rate on your monitor on the fly. FreeSync does the same thing, but it does it via software rather than hardware, and it's open source, which is why you see a lot now that the same FreeSync monitors are also G-Sync compatible. Because it's open source, NVIDIA was like, okay, well, since this is open source, we'll just make our technology work with this. I will say, from my experience, G-Sync is better at active sync, but it really comes down to what it really comes down to is the monitor. Like the quality of the monitor is what's going to be the determining factor. As long as if you have a high refresh rate monitor, the chances are you're probably not even going to use active sync. While active sync is very nice, and I currently have a G-Sync monitor, some games are a little bit janky with it too. The games that not every game gets the same amount of development attention as others, and not all companies have the same amount of budget. So I personally, in my experience, G-Sync is better, but having also had a FreeSync monitor using G-Sync on it, it's fine. It's better to have I rather would have a 144 hertz monitor or 240 hertz monitor with no active sync if it's simpler. Like if it just works and the picture quality is good, and when I'm gaming the picture isn't smudging or tearing, I'm happy. That's the most important thing is picture clarity.
Yeah, they're both relatively new technologies. I might be a little bit old school, but introducing another piece of hardware and complication, and I have a FreeSync monitor, but I don't use FreeSync simply because the games I play I don't get the tearing that it's meant to correct. So until I get to a point where I'm seeing tearing in my games, I'm probably just not going to use it. But it does for people that do have those problems. I've heard great things about it. The monitors at the gaming center are G-Sync monitors, and it should be enabled if I believe
Yeah.
if I'm correct. Yeah, um, yeah, and the short describe of what it does. They both just function as hardware-based VSync, which is VSync was always kind of a software piece that was meant to correct tearing, but usually had ill effects on the game itself. It took too long to process and try to sync up those frames, and usually you'd have most people recommend turning it off for games, but that's why they kind of made this hardware piece to help out with that. Lots of comments about RGB. Yes, yes, yes. We'll see. If
RGB clearly gives you
We'll
10
see.
more FPS per RGB light.
We'll see if we can find some sweet RGB pieces to put in this thing once we get that part started.
All right. Well, very nice. We also did get one more question
Sure.
from Yoshi Escape, and they're asking, what are each of your guys' opinion on monitor versus price? 1080, 240 hertz, maybe 1440p, 144 hertz.
I'll start with this one.
Yeah.
So I bought one of the first 120 hertz monitors when they came out as a BenQ, and this is simply one of the best upgrades you can do for a gaming PC. I always said the best upgrade you could do for a normal PC is put a solid state drive in it. Thankfully, those are quite standard nowadays, so you don't really have to give that advice. But for a gaming PC, this is what you're looking at. This is what you're directly interfacing with. Well, I guess that would be more the mouse and keyboard, but one of the things you're directly interfacing with is the monitor, the thing you're looking at. So this is where I tend to spend a little bit more money. Right now, I have a 240 1MS FreeSync monitor. It's an Acer. It was relatively cheap because it's FreeSync. FreeSync was always much cheaper, but I was really interested in 240 hertz and 1MS, and it's only 1080p. At the time, I didn't have a really great video card that I could do much 1440 gaming on, but if you're looking at doing 1440, I think 144 hertz is fine for most people. I'm not sure. I went right from 120 to 240, and I could definitely tell the difference there. I'm not sure if people can tell much the difference between 144 and 240, but I imagine there is certainly at least a little bit of a difference. I think if you started with a 1080p 1440 monitor or 1080p 144 hertz monitor, you'd save yourself a good amount of money, and you'd have a more than enough for what you were doing.
Oh, absolutely. And 1440 if you have a 1440 monitor, 144 hertz is standard for it now. Like at least for gaming monitors.
Mm-hmm.
And with 1440p, like another consideration is picture quality. It's like how much do you care about how pretty the game is on your monitor? If you're playing a lot of esports titles and you have a 1440 monitor at 144 hertz, you'll be fine. Like the world's not going to end. My previous main monitor was a Samsung 1080p 1 millisecond 144 hertz monitor, and that thing was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 1440p 240 hertz monitor. This thing is incredible, but I mean, it was definitely not a needed upgrade. It was more like I want this.
So yeah, that's the big thing. If you're going from some consumer grade monitor that's 60 hertz and it's got really bad latency, like 5 to 6 ms, going from that to just like Manny's old monitor, the 1080p 144, that is such a massive jump. Say that jump's this big. The jump from that to his current monitor or my current monitor are much smaller. So Manny was just telling me the other day that they were testing 500 hertz monitors.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
I'm skeptical,
another
but I'd be certainly interested in checking them out.
one small tidbit though, like the jump from 144 to 240 is really nice. But another thing you have to consider is, do you have a video card and a processor that can actually put out that many frames?
Right.
Will you actually be able to hit over 100 frames per second in a game? Can you hit 200 frames per second in a game? If you can't answer yes to any of those, then save yourself some money.
Cool.
Okay, very nice. Well, then, really quickly, before we go ahead and move on to next step here, just the last couple of questions for right now. Again, from LOL Sebio, they're asking, A, what do you think of 360 hertz monitors? And B, can you tell the difference between a 144 to a 360 hertz?
Never personally seen a 360, but yeah, that'd be a good study. I think there's tons and tons of YouTube videos about people comparing the differences between even 144 to 240. So it'd be interesting to see once those videos start coming out for these 360 hertz monitors or this 500 hertz one that they're talking about. Like I said, I think the gains that you're seeing between after 140 are probably negligible. Someone who plays a ton of things like first-person shooters will probably be able to tell the difference more than someone who's playing, FIFA or NBA 2K. So kind of think about what you're doing and put a more of an emphasis on what games you're playing and do you really need those smooth frame rates.
There's a good comparison video too that Linus Tech Tips did with featuring Shroud, and that video has a lot of great information about the differences between like a low refresh monitor, like a 60 hertz and 144 hertz, and they go really deep into the technical details of that.
Okay, we're about half an hour in, so
let's keep going.
Yeah, we're going to talk about now some of the tools that we use when we're building a computer for a friend or for us. Those are primarily User Benchmark and PC Part Picker. So PC Part Picker was just started by a guy on Reddit one day, and it's sort of exploded as the go-to place to build a PC. Kind of once you've educated yourself on what you're looking to do and you kind of know what you want to do, you could start a system builder here. Let me start a new one. Where's the button for that? There it is. So you can see here on the left, basically you've got just columns for choose your CPU, your cooler, your motherboard, your memory, your storage. And as you go through this, I always start with for one, I figure out the case. That's where I always start my build. What do I want to build in? Do I want to build it in a side-by-side mini ITX case? Do I want a full tower case? So you start with that. And then after that, you just kind of identify what parts and components are important to you and start inserting them in here. So we'll say for this, we want a 2070. We'll just pick this EVGA black one. Looks good. We'll toss that in there. Grab a quick case. Oh yeah, that's a solid one. And the great thing about this is, like I said, it's doing calculations for you. When you go to pick out a power supply, it'll tell you in the top left here what the estimated wattage is of all the parts that you selected so far. It'll also tell you things like, pretty awesome things like, it knows the measurements that the CPU cooler you're putting on compared to the RAM that's sitting next to it. And if the CPU cooler is too big, it'll give you a compatibility warning down here that'll say, hey, your RAM might not fit with the CPU cooler, or the case you selected won't fit that CPU cooler. And some of the video cards now are so long that some of the cases you buy won't actually fit the GPU in them. And this will do kind of all of those double and triple check things that usually, if back in the day when I used to just go to Micro Center and put something together, with whatever they had laying around, and then you get it back and you start putting it together, you're like, wow, that doesn't fit. Okay, well now we got to go back to Micro Center again. This will take a lot of those gotchas out of the process of building a PC. And you can even go as far as monitor, software operating system, and then all of your main components here, obviously. But highly recommend this if you're building a PC. And I'll let Manny talk about User Benchmark.
User Benchmark is a fun little tool. Whenever I build someone a computer, this is the first thing I run after it's all set up and ready to go after installing Windows and all its drivers. This is a good way to see and pick parts based on their performance. And you can compare, like, say you have an older processor now, you can go into the CPU section and compare that processor to a newer processor and see the percentage increase of how much more you're going to get out of it. User benchmark is such a good way to like really see if a part is worth the amount of money you're going to spend on it. And all of these these are, hence the name of the website. These are all benchmarks done on people's computers. So these aren't benchmarks that are done in like a sterile environment or a very controlled environment. These are, benchmarks that are averaged out from people like me, Phil, or anybody else.
You can see here when you compare two things, a typical thing people will do is they're trying to decide if they want to go Intel or AMD. So they'll pick up kind of similar priced Intel CPU and the AMD CPU and compare them here. And they've even got kind of what the typical FPS ratings are for specific games like CSGO, Overwatch, and Fortnite. And then it goes even deeper into, what are the speed ranks for this? And you'll see just kind of the difference between the two processors that'll help you narrow down your choice for what you're trying to pick. An extremely great tool. It's all basically crowdsourced. So all the data that you're seeing in these, and this is probably what I use the most in these columns. These are all benchmarks that were run by users. So yes, there's a certain level of human error involved here, but when you're looking at a GPU that has over 137 samples, to kind of you would hope that the law of averages would kind of eliminate some of those. Some of those people have built a monster PC around it, versus some people who have built a very mediocre PC around it. The average bench is a great tool to figure out how good is your video card. Something like the new 3090s, are up here at 215, and the previous King of the Hill is 175, the 2080 Ti. But if you look here, the difference between the old NVIDIA generation 2080 Ti King of the Hill and the 3080 non-Ti, the new one, actually has a solid bump in performance over that at a significantly reduced cost. There's usually a user rating here for people that want to assign one. This is also a good one too to sort by. You'll see kind of the value. So this is kind of a combination of the average bench versus the cost, and what's the value rating that you're getting for this video card. Some of the AMD machines are extremely valuable for the performance people are getting out of them. Things like the GTX 1660, very cheap GPU, can run almost any title at low settings. And if you're someone who plays things like Counter-Strike or Rocket League, it's probably more than enough for what you're doing. And it's a very affordable video card. Okay. And like I said, there's on both of these tools as well, there are build guides. If you're looking for guides on how to build a specific PC, there's also completed builds. So say you have one part that you're dead set on getting this part. You're dead set on getting a 2080 Ti in your, or let's see, okay, here we go. So you can just say 2080 Ti, and you'll filter, and then it'll basically just bring up, these are all builds that people have done with the 2080 Ti. So you can kind of look at these and maybe, copy it, or at least use it kind of as a base to what you want to do, or maybe give you an idea that you haven't thought of. This is something that when I'm building a new PC for myself, I certainly go through this quite a bit. I think User Benchmark also has some of those tools, though I'm not sure. But User Benchmark has these benchmarks for almost every part. Solid-state drives, GPUs, CPUs, even RAM. I'm not sure what USB is. That's pretty awesome, though. Yeah, okay. We'll take a break, check out questions, because it's going to take about 20 minutes to do the build.
I think we can head straight into that.
Yeah, it seems like we're otherwise good to go. I do have one question myself, though.
Sure.
just as somebody who's actually interested in building my own PC really soon.
Absolutely.
Do you have like a suggested order in mind for like parts that you would buy? Like, is there something that you look for first, something that like that follows right afterwards, like something like that?
Yes. So we'll speak directly within the context of gaming here.
Sure.
Basically, because that answer changes depending on what you're going to be doing in the PC. Strictly for the sake of gaming, you basically probably want to start with a video card. That's the one thing you want to figure out. That's you probably get your most bang for your buck out of that component. It's hard to say that now with how expensive they've gotten, but that's definitely, what games am I going to play? What kind of video card do I need to play those games? And then you can kind of build out the rest of the PC from there. CPU, I would say, would probably be next. Then RAM and storage.
Okay, perfect. That's a good answer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. So when we did this kind of this presentation at C2E2 this year, we actually had an old PC of mine to put together, and since we're in a virtual world now, we kind of had to call an audible on that. So this is just a Steam program called PC Building Simulator, and I just got familiar with it yesterday, and it's pretty quick and easy to put together a PC. It's even got a lot of the parts from a lot of top manufacturers, and this runs through a lot of the basics that you would need. So let's grab a case. You got a suggestion here, Manny? NZXT?
I'd say use a Be Quiet or a Fractal. One thing a good thing Lianli is also very good.
Mm-hmm.
One thing with the case, like obviously, research is going to be the biggest thing. But the other main consideration with your case, aside from size, is airflow. Where are you going to be putting this computer? Is it going to get enough air to cool it? Are the fans going to be blocked? Do the fans have a dust catch to keep the inside clean? Little things like that. The nice thing is that if you live in the city or near Westmont, you can walk into a Micro Center. You can actually look at these cases and look inside them and see, is this really the case that I want? And there's plenty of YouTubers that do case reviews as well. My favorite one being Gamers Nexus, because they are very technical.
We'll build on this blue one because it's probably a little easier to see what's going on. But this is your standard ATX case. This is what a lot of people build ATX mid-tower. Yeah. So first step is to, let me see if I can remember how to do this. Remove the side panel. Take the little screws off. Right. So side panel. And this is assuming we've already picked out all of our parts. We're kind of just, throwing this together as we go. So that's the back side panel. We're going to leave those there. So let's pick a motherboard. So we're going to want a standard ATX motherboard here. ASRock usually makes some pretty solid stuff. I like Gigabyte, MSI. Asus obviously has always been a pretty good staple for motherboards for a long time.
I go with the Asus Tough, the Z390.
I actually have an Asus Tough Z390.
Ooh.
I have the Micro ATX board though. I'm not sure. I don't think this filter works that great. Oh wow, look at that. All right. Yeah, they don't have the Micro ATX one, but this will work just fine. All right, so motherboard sits right here in the main part of the case. There's one important thing that I think this program does an awesome job of explaining. It's these little highlighted areas right now is telling you that you need to do something. So this is telling you that there's these little standoffs that you need to screw in before you even put the motherboard in. So these are basically to elevate the motherboard so it's not resting against this metal part behind it. If you don't put these in and you just screw the motherboard directly to the back of the case, you could start having some shorts. You could potentially fry the motherboard, and that's not good for anybody. So now that the standoffs are there, this is essentially just kind of setting the motherboard into it, and then there's screws. Of course, the motherboard's orange, so it's kind of distorting some of these. But yeah, there's usually 7 to 10 screws depending on the motherboard. But yeah, so now the motherboard's in. That's the first thing you would do. We'll take this back panel off too, actually, for cable management purposes. How do I? I should get rid of that thing. Now to kind of discuss where some of the things go on a motherboard. This is where the CPU typically goes. This is where you would put your RAM in these 4 vertical slots here. Some motherboards only have 2. This slot down here is typically for your graphics processor, your GPU. And then sometimes, if you want to have 2 GPUs, you'd have another one down here. Some people like actual physical sound cards as opposed to using the onboard sound that comes with some machines. Yeah, okay, so let's do... We do an i5? We'll put in the processor now.
I think 8600K will be fine.
Is that up there? There it is, yeah. So, important part of installing the processor is this little shield here. You got to remove that. So that little part will usually have a little notch that you kind of have to push down and over, and then that will release the shield. And then as far as installing the CPU, you should be very careful. Installing these, make sure not to touch the bottom of it. And there should be some notches that kind of tell you where it has to line up. And when you set it in there, it should just go right in and fit good. Be nice, and you can kind of wiggle it a little bit, and it shouldn't move at all, or very little. After you've installed the CPU, you will close the shield. And you know what we didn't do yesterday when we were screwing around with this, Manny?
Oh, thermal paste. This is a big one.
Important.
So most of the coolers that you'll buy, because not a lot of them come with it nowadays, but if you have a heatsink that comes with your processor, or you buy a AIO or a heatsink, it'll come pre-applied with it. Sometimes it won't though, so you gotta check. It's a paste. You'll see it. But it's really important to not have metal on metal contact, because that won't transfer the heat properly, and you'll probably short the part. What the thermal compound is it's a medium in which the heat can be removed from the processor and transferred through that thermal compound into the heatsink, so it can release the heat. Mm-hmm. Metal on metal isn't going to work. It's going to be bad.
It seems strange that you have to put something between it to make heat transfer better. You would think that nothing there would let it transfer better, but no. This is just a very small amount you apply to this, and then you set the CPU cooler on top. Like Manny said, typically manufacturers will ship it with it, but if you really want to get the most out of it, some people will actually remove that and put on their own. There's some higher grade thermal compounds that people will use, like IC Diamond, or what's the one that everyone used forever?
Arctic Silver?
Yes, Arctic Silver.
Yeah.
Both of those are very good and very high rated, and people have been using it for a long time. And usually you just put something about, some people say the size of a pea, or the size of a long grain of rice, a grain of long rice.
Yeah.
I found not too much. Definitely not too much.
Not too much. I like a thin X, because that way it gets because when the cooler compresses against the CPU, it's going to squish together, mm-hmm. and it's going to spread it out along the processor.
Yeah. One of the things I'll typically do too after I build a PC is start to run a CPU test on it to make sure that under load that it's not going to overheat. If you start getting heat problems, you might have to take it off and reapply the thermal paste. See if you can resolve those issues. The next part would be the cooling on top of that. Oh, see, here it says incompatible, so we can't use that one. No, it's not LGA 1151. So we'll go down. For these purposes, I'm not going to use an all-in-one. We'll just put a low-profile heatsink on. Wow, this thing's huge, actually.
Is
it actually that big?
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
yeah, see,
get. I'd say that's gonna go over the RAM slots a bit. I'd say just go with a taller one.
let's see if, yeah, see now with that, like, how do we get our RAM in there? All right, so we're gonna remove this one. We're gonna find another one. These are
Yeah,
pretty neat
freezer
too.
33.
So yeah, I think that's a better one. And this actually lets us spin it around depending on which way we want to put it for airflow. So I think this arrow indicates the airflow direction.
So we
You
have
usually
this one
want
as an
that
exhaust.
going out the back, or if there's vents on the top, you could have them going out the top. Usually I have the CPU go out the back because this vent here is kind of made for that. And to talk about airflow, usually you want, when you think of airflow flowing through your PC, you want it coming in the front. That's what these fans in the front are going to do. They're going to pull air in. Sometimes you have a fan on the bottom to pull air from under. And usually air will be going exhausting out the top or the back. Your GPU is going to be pumping hot air out the back, as well as the CPU, hopefully. So think of air moving through the PC. You don't want fans pushing and pulling against each other. You want that airflow to be efficient to help keep everything cool. All right, so okay. All right, so that's in. You can see here it's actually very large. You wonder how it's even going to fit, but looks like we'll be able to fit the side panel on even with this large cooler. Any questions? Okay. Next.
Pop in some RAM.
Yeah. So like I said, I typically buy Corsair RAM, but that is certainly up to you. The speed of the RAM is also very important. Um, but the majority of the RAM you're going to get nowadays is going to be around 3700, 4200. DDR4. Higher speed RAM, the price starts to go up exponentially. Once you get to a certain point, there's some seriously fast RAM out there, but it'll cost you. So usually you want to stay around this 3200. 3200 range is probably the best.
2666
Is
is
okay.
serviceable. It's okay.
Yes.
There is a noticeable difference though between that and 3200. You want to aim for that 3200,
Yeah.
and uh, it's relatively good on your wallet at 3200. The only reason it'll be more expensive for that speed is because pretty RGB lights.
Yes. Yes. RGB lights are very important for some people, and yeah, you can get RGB RAM, RGB video cards, RGB cases, fans, everything. So the RAM slots actually have these little clips that you have to open, and then as you push the RAM in, the clips should close and secure it. If the clips have closed around it, you've closed it the right way. And the RAM can only go in one way. There's the slot it fits into has a notch in it that's more leaned towards one side, so it'll only go in one way. If it doesn't fit the other way, flip it around and put it in. We'll go ahead and put another stick in.
When you feel it, when you put it in, when you're doing this in real life, you'll hear it click, audibly click.
Yeah.
And you can push it. Make sure you push it down and have it securely in there, and make sure those tabs have closed around it, because this is one of the things that will cause your computer not to start. The RAM needs to be securely in there because that is a critical part to the computer.
Yeah. And the other thing while you're building a computer you should always have right next to you is the motherboard manual. The motherboard manual is going to tell you any specific things you got to do when installing RAM. Always install in slots 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 4. Those kind of things are always listed there. You can always look there for reference. Next thing, we'll toss in a video card. Oh, that's not the right category. Wow. I'm a big fan of EVGA. I've got that. I got one on my PC right now. Oop, I can't install it yet because I haven't removed these little panels that need to be removed before you can install it. So switch back to remove here. Got to remove that. That. I guess this one takes up 3. 3 slots. Oh,
Oh,
sorry,
one more.
wrong one. Well, let me
You
put
can
that
probably
one,
put back that
let me
top
put that
one.
one back. Okay, you know you don't want to have it looking bad. All right. You just slide that in there. It usually, kind of just like the RAM, it has a slot that once you actually get into its spot, it'll click. Should be an audible click, and you'll know what's in its spot.
And then you'll screw that back in too. It'll have these, as you can see with the little orange highlighting, you'll screw it in there as well. And that'll help give it support, because some of these cards are really big. That'll help give it support so that the board doesn't sag. Because if the board sags and it's not held up properly, it'll cause damage to it.
I was wondering where the M2 slot was. It's right here, so we won't have to take out the video card to put that in. So we'll go...
That should be, well, realistically, yes.
okay, well let's, yeah. Realistically, you probably want to put the storage in first. So we'll toss in... We'll toss in an M2. I guess most of them are just up here. Here we go. Here's a pretty solid one. 480 gigs, M2, 2.7 gigabyte per second. That's extremely fast. Some of them are even getting faster than that nowadays. And this usually just has kind of like a RAM slot, but it's much smaller. You just slide it in to that RAM slot.
When you put it in, it'll come up at an angle like this.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Just push it in until it's secure. And then you'll push it down, and there'll be a screw that goes on the end of it, and it'll screw down securely.
Yeah, and you can see here it's having me put that screw in here on the end of it to secure it. So now that's your storage in. I'll toss the video card back in. Oh, that's what I was waiting for. Screw these in to make sure it's secure to the case on this end. Are video cards only taking up 3 slots nowadays?
It depends on the manufacturer.
Mine's only 2. Okay, last part would be, so we're running short on time, would be the power supply. So we'll just toss in
750.
We'll just toss in
You get a Corsair?
750.
Yeah.
No, there we go. RM 750. So this usually has a couple screws in the back once you get it in. Now that is the majority of the actual component installation. This is that hard drive case I was talking about before, when you would put in like a spinning disk hard drive. You would put one here and connect it. If you really feel the need that you need an optical drive, a DVD-ROM or something, that would go up here. You could install some case fans up here if you wanted to, or on the back. But for the sake of getting this done in time, we're just going to cable everything up. See, now if I hit the cable button here, all kinds of stuff lights up. This is everything that needs to be connected. So this first one is connecting the air cooler. The air cooler will usually connect to a fan controller, because essentially what you're doing is you're controlling the fan of that cooler. As the CPU gets hotter, the motherboard's going to tell the fan it needs to go quicker to get more air through it. So that's connected. Next we'll connect, this is the CPU power, and that connects all the way down to the motherboard down here, or to the power supply. And you can see actually what the game did is it routed that wire through the back and then down here.
That's why it's good when you're building your PC. Pull off all the panels so that way you can run your wires. You don't want to have a rat's nest of wires in the front, because that actually hurts your computer. It hurts its cooling. You want to have it cabled as cleanly as you possibly can. Not too tight, not too loose, but
Cable
enough.
as much as you can to the back, and a lot of these have been improved incredibly, the cable management, compared to the old days.
And most cases come with those like cutouts and those grommets where you can shove cables through and keep them hidden.
And we'll plug in the motherboard power here. This is usually the biggest power cable you've got, but just as it does here, funnel through the back and then get it plugged in. The GPU also has typically two PCIe power cables need to get connected to the power supply. And just like here, run it under the GPU, through the back. Keep everything down here as neat as you can. The last couple of things are a couple fans, which usually go to a fan controller on the motherboard. These aren't really power. This is necessarily just, it does power them, but they're pretty low. They're pretty low voltage, so they don't need to get directly plugged into the motherboard. I guess this has a daisy chain. Okay. Another big thing is here. You got to plug this in. This is your power button. So there usually be, when you take a case out of a box, there'll be a bunch of cables connected to this front panel that you have to run down and connect here. There'll be some.
They'll be labeled.
Pins. Yeah, they'll be labeled. It should be pretty. If you follow your motherboard manual, it should be pretty easy to connect the case wires to the motherboard. But be careful when you're doing it. Last things, we'll plug in our peripherals. This is just the mouse, power, keyboard. Oh, that's the video. There's the mouse. Ah. Alright. I think we're all connected up. So that's the power button. Oop. Looks like we're powering up. Oh, no OS found, so something we do for that. It's awesome that this game actually has this built in. Go ahead and grab a USB stick with an operating system on it, stick it in there, power it off, power it back on.
If you're likely going to use Windows, you can download a tool from them to make a USB drive into a Windows boot drive. And it'll, when you start your computer, most motherboards will say like hit F2 to boot from something, or some will actually just recognize it right away and boot right into it, and then you can start installing Windows.
So this is a cool game. You can install all these little apps. This is a cool one. I don't know why it makes me restart. I guess I could have said no, huh? But this'll if you build the PC you want to build in this game, it'll actually, you can run this and say like, will it run? Does it meet the recommended specs for Dota 2? It looks like we're good to play Dota 2, so that's pretty neat. But aside from that, I want to thank you guys for coming. Obviously, this is something we'd love to do in person, so everyone can get a close-up look at the parts and how things go together, and a little bit more of a crisp feel of, you know, what is that sound that it makes when you click the RAM in, or you know, what does that part look like? And we hope once things have gotten better that we can do that. But
yeah, there's a very like satisfying and visceral feel to putting together a computer, and especially that feeling once you have it all put together and you close up the case and it turns on and it works is incredibly satisfying.
And you know, the one thing that this application doesn't show, and that your first PC build I guarantee you will do wrong, is you get all this done, you do exactly what we did, and you'll hit this power button and nothing will happen. But you did everything right. And it's funny that this game actually doesn't point it out, is that this little switch here in the power supply will actually prevent the power. It's kind of its own little on-off switch on the power supply. I don't know how many times I've hit that power button for the first time and nothing happened. I was like, what happened? Oh. You go back, you flick it on, and you hit it again, and it spins right up.
Probably done that every time I've built a computer. Every single time.
Yeah, because you get so sidetracked, you forget about it. You get so excited when you get to
it's
the
like,
point where
oh, I'm finally done.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Well, we'd love to take some questions if anyone's got any.
Yeah.
Aside
Absolutely.
from that, I'm sure, you know, DePaul students can know how to reach out to us. We're in Teams, and email is always great too.
And if you're in the esports Discord, we're in there too.
Yep. Any questions you might have about specific builds, we'd love to help. Yeah.
Even if is this part worth it? Glad to answer your question.
I can't give any advice on RGB. Don't come to me.
I can. I've built a couple computers for a couple clients myself, and the sky's the limit. But man, at the same time, it's like how much do you really care about how it looks, and is it going to be in a place where somebody can actually see it?
Gotta have those pretty colors, man.
Hey,
That's the one thing I gotta do.
every RGB plus 10 FPS.
Yeah, yeah, right. They just want a whole light, a whole night light, just to guide them while they sleep. Yeah. Anyway, this looks really, really great. Of course, if anybody has some last questions, like Phil was saying, feel free to post them right now. Although I have a bit of a question myself. This one's a little bit more of a noob question, so bear with me.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I noticed that when we were scrolling through, especially and such as when we were looking through the fans the first time, there was a lot of parts that they said they were unavailable or that they couldn't fit.
Mhm.
Is that like a compatibility issue with like other parts, or is it just that they physically cannot fit into the case that's being used?
So the answer to your question is both.
Okay.
So when we were looking like at the CPU coolers, so some of those CPU coolers might be meant for an AMD processor. Now an AMD processor versus an Intel processor, the thing that when you saw us put the processor onto the motherboard, that's called a socket. So Intel has a very specific socket that fits their processors, whereas AMD has a different one. And the coolers are made to fit around those sockets. So if you bought an Intel processor and an AMD motherboard, well, the CPU wouldn't fit in the motherboard properly. If you bought an Intel motherboard, an Intel processor, and a cooler that was meant for an AMD processor, it might that cooler might not fit on that board. And it's nice that one, this application shows you, but even better,
PC Part Picker will
PC
actually
part
tell
picker,
you.
PC part picker, and actually there's a when you're picking a new part. Sorry, the train's going by. When you're picking a part, it'll usually there's a box here. There's this compatibility filter. This will actually hide everything that won't fit what you currently selected.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the building process seemed very like straightforward. It made a lot of sense to me. That was the only thing I was wondering about. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Helped a lot.
absolutely.
All right. Well, it doesn't seem that we have any more questions coming in, so I think we're all good to go. Again, like you said, like if anybody wanted to reach you through the Discord server, for example, you guys are both there.
Absolutely.
Yes. And you can find us by our names.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Perfect. Well, this has been really great.
Matt, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you both, Phil, Manny. Thank you both so much for showing us this around. Like, I mean, I know I personally learned a lot myself, so I'm definitely set to go. I'm definitely set to go as far as like picking out the parts that I need and building a PC of my own. And I'm sure that other people watching are going to be feeling the same way.
Yeah.
So,
Feel free to reach out with questions or build advice once you get there.
all right, will do. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right.
Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you have a great night, and we'll see you next time.